All right, so while folks are still filtering in, we're just going to go ahead and get started. My name is Emily Vale. I'm the Executive Director of the Hudson River Watershed Alliance, and today I'll be presenting on a new, very exciting opportunity for technical assistance on watershed characterizations. And first, I'd like to hand it over to Tom Nakrovitz from the Hudson River Estuary Program to give a quick introduction.
Thanks, Emily. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Like Emily said, I'm Tom Nakrovitz, I'm the Water Resource Specialist with the New York State DEC Hudson River Estuary Program. And I could speak as a whole for the Hudson River Estuary Program, as we're excited to help the process of the Hudson River Watershed Alliance, Watershed Characterization and Technical Assistance, which is funded through the New England Interstate Water Pollution Control Commission, aka NEIWPCC. And then for those who don't know really quick about the Hudson River Estuary Program, our program helps people to enjoy, protect, and revitalize the Hudson River and its valley. Our program is also guided by our action agenda, and we offer a plethora of programs to our partners, which include education, trainings, technical assistance, grants, research, monitoring, and mapping. We're glad that the Hudson River Watershed Alliance has initiated this effort to provide technical assistance to develop watershed characterizations, as they're one of the most important first steps along the path to understand your surrounding watershed and eventually developing a watershed plan. Watershed characterizations help watershed groups and partners understand what is known and missing. They provide baseline of existing conditions, land uses, and information important to water resources. Characterizations can be used as justification and baseline for further research, monitoring, planning, and stewardship for a watershed. These efforts will help opportunities and challenges for the watershed protection and restoration strategies moving forward, and that is why we're so excited. So thank you again, Emily, and I'll hand it back off to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Tom, and thanks to the Hudson River Estuary Program for your support of this work. So I'm going to share my screen and just a couple notes on process here. Thanks to everyone who submitted questions ahead of time for this webinar. I will answer those either during the presentation or at the end. If during the presentation portion of this session you have any questions, go ahead and put them into the Q&A box. So there should be a box at the bottom of your screen. The chat, continue to introduce yourselves if you're just joining us with your name and where you're zooming in from. But we'll try to keep questions to that Q&A box to make sure they're streamlined and we can get to all of them. So I'll give some background on watershed characterizations and the technical assistance opportunity, and then we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. Great, so thanks to everyone for joining us today. Right. So again, my name is Emily Vale. I'm the Executive Director of the Hudson River Watershed Alliance, and I'll be presenting on our watershed characterization technical assistance opportunity today. The Hudson River Watershed Alliance is a regional nonprofit. We work throughout the Hudson River watershed to unite and empower communities to protect our local water resources. And we do that by supporting local watershed groups, working to improve intermunicipal coordination, and communicating as a collective voice across the region on water issues. An outline of the presentation portion, I'll give an overview of the program, talk a little bit about watershed planning and the characterization process, go through some of the details of the technical assistance opportunity, including eligibility and selection criteria. We'll talk about the application process and timeline, and then answer questions at the end. So as a broad overview, in 2022 and 2023, the Hudson River Watershed Alliance will provide technical assistance to develop 2 watershed characterizations, which is the first step of a watershed plan. This is a technical assistance opportunity, so no funding or match is required from participants, but you will need to commit your time. The application deadline is Wednesday, June 15th at 5 p.m. And all of the details that I'll cover today and more are available on the project website, which is here. So hudsonwatershed.org/watershed characterization technical assistance. As Tom mentioned, this program is supported by funding from the Hudson River Estuary Program, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, with support from the New York State Environmental Protection Fund in cooperation with NEIWPCC. So to give an overview of watershed planning, we need to start first with what a watershed is. A watershed is the land area where water flows to a specific water body. So when it rains, streams and groundwater collect that water and have it flow to a particular body of water. Watersheds are generally defined by topography, and they're the geographic unit best suited to understanding conditions and managing water bodies. So we can undertake planning at a variety of different scales, but watershed planning is particularly important for looking at our water resources. Watersheds are scalable, and larger watersheds can be broken into smaller sub-watersheds, depending on the goal and the need at hand. The Hudson River Watershed itself is 13,400 square miles. It extends from the Adirondacks all the way down to New York City, and it includes the Upper Hudson, Mohawk River, and Hudson River Estuary watersheds. Tributaries support the health and ecosystem of the Hudson River, and each tributary has its own watershed. So we can think about scales going from the broadest Hudson River watershed down to the Hudson River Estuary watershed, and then down to the tributary scale as well. So a watershed plan compiles information, defines targets, and sets priorities for actions to achieve specific goals. And here in New York State, we have a statewide framework from the Department of State and the Department of Environmental Conservation called the Guidebook on Watershed Plans. So there's this guidebook that outlines a process for watershed planning that can be used throughout New York State. In general, the watershed planning process includes defining goals, delineating a watershed at the appropriate scale, convening stakeholders, and then really importantly, compiling existing data. And that's the piece of this that we're really going to be focusing on today and through this watershed characterization process. So when we compile existing data on a particular watershed, it can include physical characteristics, water quality and quantity, land use and land cover, habitat, infrastructure, demographics and social data, local laws and policies, and information from previous plans. So all of that information gets compiled into the watershed characterization, which can then be used to identify data gaps, communicate about the watershed, sharing what you know all in one place, and also provide a really important foundation for future planning. So again, thinking about the importance of compiling existing data, this is really, taking these steps together is the characterization process. And prioritizing issues, creating goals, specifying actions, implementation, measuring progress, and adapting, those can be taken together and be thought of as the plan. And so, of course, defining goals happens throughout the process, and we always want to make sure that the work is in line with the goals. But you can see that the characterization really is that first step, and that was one of the in that flow chart from EPA as well, one of the important first steps of developing a plan. So watershed planning is really important. And at the end of the process, in general, we want to see a group of people that's ready on board to work on issues and a set of priorities, would have that watershed characterization to summarize current conditions, along with a prioritized, specific, and strategic list of actions to improve watershed health. And watershed planning helps us deal with current issues and also prepare for the future. So I've got a couple of screenshots here from the Quassia Creek Watershed Management Plan, which went through this process. This is one of the maps, which includes the city of Newburgh's drinking water supply prior to its contamination, its known contamination with PFAS chemicals. So this is just one example of having these maps, having these watersheds really characterized can be so helpful right now, but also in case future issues arise and we really need a better understanding of how watersheds are flowing. So again, to get back to the watershed characterization, developing a watershed characterization report is the first step in watershed planning. And the watershed characterization process includes organizing a watershed advisory committee, delineating the focus watershed, gathering existing data, and summarizing the information into a report. Here's another map from the Quassia Creek Management Plan in the characterization section of that plan. So here's some copy taken directly out of that guidebook from DOS and DEC. This characterization report will provide a context for the planning effort and can be used to educate partners and the community on watershed conditions and generate local support. The watershed characterization report will provide you with a description of the watershed, a summary of baseline watershed conditions, and provide a sense of the key problems in the watershed. So again, the report really compiles existing data into one place. It doesn't collect new information. It's not studies to collect more data. It's really taking what we already know and packaging it, compiling it into one place. It includes maps and charts to help interpret that information and explain current watershed conditions. It provides a foundation for watershed planning. And really, I think importantly, it tells the story of the watershed. So what do we know about this watershed? What do we want other people to know about this watershed? We can start to find where there are gaps and where we would start to prioritize, maybe collecting some more data, but also establishing priorities for planning. What are some key areas that we really want to focus on? Watershed characterizations are eligible for New York State Climate Smart Communities certification points for municipalities. They show up in Pledge Element 7, Watershed Plan for Water Quality. You get 2 points for the characterization and 4 to 6 points for the plan, depending on the specifics. And they also show up in the Hudson River Estuary Program's action agenda. So this action agenda was just released last year. And under the Thriving and Resilient Watershed Benefit Healthy Tributaries, there's a goal by 2025, 10 watersheds have one or more of the following, including a watershed-based assessment, characterization, cooperative agreement, management plan, and so on. So this is really a priority for the Hudson River Estuary Program. And really, there's a lot of great reasons to undertake watershed planning and watershed characterizations at the local level as well. So in terms of the specific technical assistance opportunity, the Hudson River Watershed Alliance is soliciting applications for technical assistance for 2 watershed characterizations in 2022 and 2023. We'll use the framework that's outlined in the Guidebook on Watershed Plans, and we're looking to pick 1 urban watershed and 1 rural watershed to cover a variety of different land use and different data types that might be available in those different watersheds. And we plan to use these as templates for the future. So this is a pilot process. We'll be sharing our lessons learned, and we're hoping that we'll start with these 2, but that we may keep this process rolling and hope to help with many more as well. So in terms of specific roles, the applicant role is to submit the application. It seems obvious, but it bears repeating. The applicant should identify members of the advisory committee, and you can always add members later, but applications will be scored higher if there's more demonstrated community support through the advisory committee. And the applicant will also serve as a point of contact during the characterization process. The Hudson River Watershed Alliance's role is to facilitate 8 advisory committee meetings over the course of a year and a half. We will write the watershed characterization report, manage the overall planning process, and then provide a final presentation to the watershed and communities at the end of the process. To be eligible, watersheds must be located within the Hudson River Estuary Watershed, be HUC 12 size or smaller based on USGS delineation, and include at least 2 local municipalities in addition to the county or counties. So we'll go through each of those. Applicants may be watershed groups, municipalities, or other entities, and must demonstrate local stakeholder support for this project. So the applicant is a representative from a particular entity representing a group. So first, to be eligible, watersheds must be located within the Hudson River Estuary Watershed. In this case, we're defining this as the Hudson River Estuary Program's program area. There's a map here, and throughout the RFA, which is available on the website, there's links to more information on each of these, so you can find out, if you're within the area and make sure that you're eligible before submitting an application. Watersheds must also be HUC 12 size or smaller. HUC stands for Hydrologic Unit Code. This is a delineation that the US Geologic Survey uses across the country to delineate watersheds. Different numbers represent the different sizes of the watershed area. HUC 12s are pretty small. They're about 32, 36 square miles. The exact size depends on the local topography. And for larger watersheds, the HUC 12s break down larger HUC 8, HUC 10 watersheds into smaller components. And we recommend using the Hudson Valley Natural Resource Mapper to find your HUC delineation. There's more information on the Natural Resource Mapper on the specifics. Now, one thing I want to just mention is that HUC 12s are small and many of our tributary watersheds are much larger. Here you're looking at a map of the Wallkill River from the Wallkill River Watershed Management Plan. This is not a HUC 12, this is much larger, but planning processes can take place at a variety of scales and be really useful. And I think a really good example of this is that one sub-watershed of the Wallkill River is the Monhegan Brook in the city of Middletown. And in 2019, Orange County created a Monhegan Brook Watershed Plan to really focus in on that specific watershed. So although the Wallkill River Watershed had its own larger watershed plan, the Monhegan Brook Watershed Plan was able to get into much more detail because it's a much smaller scale. So this is a good example of how if you have a larger watershed, this HUC 12 opportunity still could be helpful. You would just need to select one of the HUC 12s within your larger watershed that you'd like to focus on. Watersheds must also include at least 2 local municipalities in addition to the county or counties. So here is in blue is the HUC 12 delineation of the Monhegan Brook watershed, just to continue with that as an example. And you can see that it includes the town of Wawayanda here, city of Middletown, and the town of Wallkill. So these brown boundaries are the municipal boundaries. So this watershed includes 3 municipalities plus Orange County, and so it would be eligible. One thing that I also want to note is that the HUC 12 delineation may be larger than the watershed delineation. So here, the Monhegan Brook is this part, but it also includes the Masonic Creek and parts of the Wallkill River watershed. And so if your watershed is smaller than the HUC 12 delineation, that is still eligible, but you may need to work with a GI expert to map that delineation or use the StreamStats tool to map it yourself. So in this smaller delineation, the Monhegan Brook still includes those 3 municipalities and so would still be eligible. Watersheds that are sources of municipal drinking water are not eligible for this opportunity, and that's because drinking water sources are currently eligible for free technical assistance through New York State's Drinking Water Source Protection Program, or DWSP2. There's a rolling application for municipalities to receive this technical assistance, and what they're able to provide is much more robust and really specifically targeted for sources of drinking water. So if your watershed of interest is a drinking water source, highly recommend that you check out the information here and apply for the DWSP2 technical assistance. In terms of selection criteria, eligible applications will be scored on readiness timing, stakeholder support, and the ability to which they can serve as a template for future planning. We'll go through each of these as well. The scoring sheet is available on the program website for more details, so you can see how you might stack up. And one thing I'd like to mention too is that on these slides, I don't have the references, but in the actual request for applications or RFA, there are detailed information for how you can look for the specific information that we're asking for within the application. For example, the DEC info locator has a lot of great information. Here's the Monhegan Brook watershed again. We pulled up the MS4 boundaries, and you can see that this would be considered an urban watershed because it's got lots of MS4, municipal separate storm sewer system area. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but this was a place where the map could fit in on the slide, so we've included it here. So in terms of readiness and timing, we're looking for an applicant with background and interest in watershed work and really a project that can help set up future work. So we want people that are ready to use the process and report in a meaningful way to support local conservation goals. That could be working towards a larger watershed plan, a natural resource inventory, or other municipal planning, forming a watershed group, or other local conservation goals. Municipalities within the watershed that are registered or certified climate smart communities will help get additional points. And applicants can update outdated plans, but not duplicate recent work. And we're really leaving it up to you to describe the need if there has been a recent project. We're not defining what recent is, but if there has been a watershed plan or characterization that needs to be updated, we're looking for the applicants to justify why and what this process would help support, how this would update that information. Stakeholder support is really important. We're looking for demonstrated buy-in from key stakeholders with letters of support submitted with the application. We have a template for letters of support available on the program website, so please use that. We're also considering an outreach plan to involve additional advisory committee members, engage the community, and support an inclusive and equitable planning process. So we're really looking for the advisory committee to play a role in local community engagement, making sure that there's great coordination locally with this and other potential planning projects, and making sure that the process includes many different voices and is an inclusive process. We're also looking at watersheds that include mapped environmental justice areas defined as DEC's potential environmental justice areas. And those are available on the DEC info locator as well. In terms of the template for future planning, so again, this is the extent to which the watershed represents a useful case study and template for future watershed characterization planning processes based on other applicants. So part of this is the availability of local data. The characterization process will focus on regional and statewide available data, but it would be really helpful to also include existing local data. It could be water quality monitoring, existing reports, other kinds of projects that have been completed in the past, and bring that information in. And we're also looking to do one rural and one urban watershed defined by MS4s, municipal separate storm sewer systems, and municipal wastewater treatment facilities that are located within the watershed. And we know that this is relative. Many, many watersheds have rural headwaters and more urbanized downstream sections. And so really the goal here is to include a range of different land uses within the two templates so that they can be great case studies and great templates for future planning work. So to some extent, this will be based on against some of the other applications that we receive. There's also a section in the application for other planning needs. This section will not be scored, but it's an opportunity to share with us if you have any other watershed-based planning needs. The Hudson River Watershed Alliance will be maintaining a list, and we'll be trying to connect people with resources whether or not you receive this technical assistance opportunity. So you may be interested in doing some kind of a flood study in your watershed, or undertaking a culvert assessment, or conducting a strategic plan for your watershed group. So all of those are on that checklist. So please let us know what your planning needs are. If you're interested in more information on different plan types or how we're defining some of these terms, we have a webinar recording on an introduction to watershed planning that you can find on our YouTube channel. In terms of the process and timeline, the application deadline is Wednesday, June 15th at 5 p.m. You can email your completed PDF application form with a PDF copy of all of the letters of support to me at emily@hudsonwatershed.org. The applications will be reviewed and scored by a team, including staff from the Hudson River Watershed Alliance and the Hudson River Estuary Program, and we expect to notify applicants by August 1st of this year. So the timeline, in early May, this opportunity was announced. Today is May 19th. You're at the informational webinar. The application deadline is June 15th. Between now and then, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. I'm available to answer questions about this process if they arise. On August 1st, we expect to notify our technical assistance recipients. The project will kick off in fall 2022. We'll establish the advisory committee. The advisory committee will meet over the course of fall 2022 into fall 2023, so about a year and a half. And then in December 2023, the project will wrap up. The watershed characterizations will be complete, and we'll be providing presentations to the communities that participated. So for more information, all program materials are on our website, and I'll be putting the link into the chat once I stop sharing my screen as well. It includes the guidebook on watershed plans if you want more information on the process that we'll be following, the full request for applications, which again has more details and links to information for the application form itself, the letter of support template, the scoring sheet, and after today, I'll also be adding the recording of this webinar and a PDF copy of the slides, so you have access to all of the links that I've shared here. You can also get more information on watershed planning on our website. We have a list of existing watershed plans in the Hudson River watershed, which might be helpful context, along with watershed planning resources like the Department of State and DEC Guidebook, the DWSP2 framework, guidance on DEC 9-element watershed plans, and that's on the watershed planning page as well. There's also other funding available for watershed characterizations and planning, including 2 opportunities that are currently out there that you can apply to. So having seen all of this information, you might realize that you're not eligible for this, or maybe you have a larger watershed and you don't want to really focus on the HUC 12. It is possible to apply for funding through the Hudson River Estuary Grant Program for local stewardship planning for up to $50,000 to support watershed characterizations. Those applications are due June 1st. And in terms of a larger planning process, so $50,000 to $3 million are available in the New York State Department of State's local waterfront revitalization program. So they have a specific LWRP, local waterfront revitalization program component that is a watershed management plan, and municipalities can apply through the consolidated funding application, which is due on July 29th, for a larger watershed planning process that also goes through that Department of State DEC guidance document. So you can get more information on those 2 websites. So that's the end of my presentation. And at this point, I will open it up to Q&A. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Okay, great. So I've got some questions coming in. Thank you, everyone. So I will start with some of the questions that came in by email prior to this while you're thinking through this. And actually, let me go ahead and drop the link into the chat for all of the information that you might need. Okay, so some questions that came in asking about if there's a hydrologic model, can manipulating this model to reduce flooding be part of this assessment? So this particular watershed characterization technical assistance opportunity does not include hydrologic or hydraulic modeling. It's really compiling existing data that's out there, and that would be generating new data through the model. So if any of that work has been completed already, so if the hydrologic model exists, we can reference it within the characterization, we can pull some of that information in and link to that more detailed study. If the goal is to do a hydrologic or hydraulic model in the future, the characterization can be a foundation for some of the information that you need to inform that future planning. So it won't be directly manipulating any existing models, but it can certainly reference those and also lead to more technical watershed planning in the future. I also got a question, does this characterization include parts of watersheds that might be in New Jersey, and would participation of New Jersey municipalities be beneficial? And so this technical assistance opportunity is eligible for watersheds within the Hudson River Estuary Watershed, and that may include states outside of New York State. So that doesn't preclude those watersheds, because the watersheds and the water will flow into and impact resources in New York State. But that said, we're really going to rely in those cases on the local advisory committee to coordinate with municipalities and other partners outside of New York State. So we can include that information, but that's really where the local advisory committee partners are going to be most helpful. Okay, so can we participate in the program if we're in the Delaware watershed was another question that came in. And unfortunately, because the funding is from the Hudson River Estuary Program, we are limited to the Hudson River Estuary Watershed. But that said, the framework that we're using is available statewide through the Department of State and the DEC. And the New York State Department of State's local waterfront revitalization program grants are also available statewide. So if you watch this webinar and you said, this is really great, but I'm not eligible, really encourage you to take a look at the opportunities that are actively available right now. There's some really great information on the Department of State's website on their planning process. And if you can get one of those big grants, you'll be in great shape. All right, so looking here, we've got a question. The definition of urban watersheds as having MS4 and wastewater treatment plants seem clear. Are there any other considerations in defining urban watersheds like density, land use, et cetera? We're really using MS4 and wastewater treatment plants as our definition of what an urban versus a rural is. We know that that doesn't really consider the wide spectrum of suburban and semi-rural and ex-urban. You know, we know that land use is really quite variable. And so this is another place where we're going to really compare the applications against each other to some extent. So there may be 1 or 2 wastewater treatment plants in one watershed and many more in another one. That could give us some indication. We'll look at the MS4 percentage within the watershed as well. And MS4 is a pretty good proxy for things like density and urban land use. So we'll see as the applications come in how they compare against each other. And like I said, we're really looking for 2 great, ready to go, stakeholder engaged watersheds that are different enough from each other that they can be 2 different, very useful templates. And thank you for the feedback on how efficient the webinar was. Thank you, Amanda Laval. Okay, great. You mentioned having county involvement or support. Please provide details on what you're looking for on this. Yeah, so counties are really, really valuable in watershed planning. They're really valuable partners. And if you are applying for watershed technical assistance through this opportunity, we'd really encourage you to reach out to your county agencies and engage them, involve them. It would be great to have their participation on the advisory committee. Oftentimes our county agencies have great GIS resources. They have a lot of that data that crosses individual municipalities. They have great expertise. And so we want to make sure that they're at the table. That's just one example of a stakeholder group that we'd want to be part of the advisory committee. And so really recommend getting letters of support from your county agency contacts if you're planning to apply for this. Okay, great. We've got a question here. How long do you think it takes to complete the application for technical assistance? It's only available to 2 communities. It seems like a barrier for under-resourced communities to apply. That is a great question. So we're really hoping to lower some of the barriers for many of these watershed planning grants. If the Department of State watershed planning grants require a municipality, the Hudson River Estuary Program grants require a certain percentage of match. In this case, we're not looking for match, we're really looking for people's time to commit. So we're hoping that it will be more possible for under-resourced communities to apply without the need to put specific money down and some of the other barriers that we've heard about applying to grants for these kinds of opportunities. I don't know how long it will take to complete the application. And if you have feedback on that, I'd really welcome hearing it. This is our first time doing something like this. That information would be really valuable. We did create it as a PDF as opposed to an online form so that it would be easier to send around and collaborate with people, maybe work on different sections together to take some of that burden off one person. I myself have applied for grants on a website, and it can be really challenging to collaborate in that case. So that's why we switched it over to a PDF. If it's only available to 2 communities, yeah, so we will be selecting only 2 watersheds. It will be really helpful to get a better sense of what the needs are out there. So if we get a huge response, we don't want to just stop there. We want to make sure we help people connect to the resources to do the characterization, whether it's through us or through other partners. And so we're hoping that this is not a waste of time. We're hoping that whatever information you compile for the application can be used for another grant application, or that we might be able to share it with other folks who might be able to provide technical assistance like DWSP2 for drinking water sources as an example. So that is one of the reasons we're really sensitive to this we don't want to waste people's time, but we want to set people up. So if you would like a watershed characterization, please throw your hat in the ring and we'll try to figure out how we can make it happen, even if it's not with this particular opportunity.
Hey, Emily, it seems like somebody put a question in the chat. I think it's the last message in the chat.
Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. Okay, so I'll read that out loud. What is the real world application of all this information beyond presenting to municipalities. Because of local control issues, what goes into coordination of land use between municipalities with this information? So after the initial characterization sharing, how is the info not siloed? Grace, great question. So what happens? You've done all this work, you've developed this really nice report, and then what happens? So hopefully that report goes into some kind of a next step. So over the course of the planning process, there may be gaps that have been identified. For example, you might need additional water quality monitoring to better understand some specifics, or you might realize that there's gaps in local land use protection, or that there's a need for some other kind of next step. So while the characterization process is not a full plan, where the plan will really identify those strategic actions and a timeline and who's going to be doing what, the characterization will still land with some specific next steps for what might happen next. And we really are hoping that this is not siloed, that this is a project that can lead to some future next steps. Ideally, the next step after a watershed characterization would be a watershed management plan to follow through with the entire Department of State framework. And so that includes taking a look at the data, maybe doing some of that modeling, maybe doing some of the monitoring if there's water quality information that's missing, and pulling that together and really scoping out some highly local, site-specific projects, practices, next steps, getting a timeline, getting a budget for some of those things, and making sure it can move forward into implementation. So there are opportunities to get projects that are within a watershed management plan funded through programs like the New York State DEC's Water Quality Improvement Program projects, WQIP, and others. So yeah, so we see the characterization process as laying a really strong foundation, being really useful for communication, perhaps bringing other people to the table, alerting people about problems, but also as a stepping stone to something else as well, which is one of the reasons that's in the application, is we want to hear from you what you're hoping to achieve with this opportunity. Okay. Another question, would identify gaps include analysis of the fractured government responsibilities for watershed actions? That's a great question. I think that's a little beyond the scope of this particular process, but we'd have to see over the course of the pilot project, if this is something that the advisory committee is really interested in taking on and doing sort of a policy analysis, or looking at the jurisdiction of various government agencies, that could be something that we might include. But in terms of overall analysis of who does what, and I don't think this project would include that. It would really be looking at the local, what's happening within that HUC 12 small watershed. Great, okay. Having developed templates on smaller watersheds, will any future assistance target larger ones? Great question. So the Hudson River Estuary Program offers grant funding to develop watershed characterizations that's not size limited. And so we're hoping that by doing these templates that are in some ways the most streamlined approach, very small, very simple, then we can start to build on that template and look at what kinds of information would be needed to inform larger watersheds. So does the scale of analysis change? What kind of data are available? Obviously, it would be a lot more information from all of the different municipalities. It could incorporate more municipal plans. So we wanted to start with these templates as sort of the most baseline scale, knowing that we could scale up and there might be ways to make these more sophisticated and more fine-tuned for larger ones. So for anyone who's in a watershed that's larger than a HUC 12, encourage you to apply for Hudson River Estuary Program funding to do that. Another aspect could be working with the Hudson River Watershed Alliance on a small HUC 12, and then moving out to the larger watershed with a future estuary program grant. So we're really trying to have steps here that would follow a progression to help get the watershed to your goals. Okay, can you describe the intention behind the eligibility requirement to include at least 2 local municipalities in addition to the county or counties? Yes. So some small watersheds, some very small watersheds include just one municipality. So for example, I've done some work on the Tannery Brook in Kingston, and the Tannery Brook includes just the smallest part of the town of Ulster, but it really is within one municipality, it's the city of Kingston. And so in part, that was a way that we could do smaller than HUC 12, but not so small that it's only one municipality. The other intention behind this is to make sure we have data for more than one municipality and that we are doing some cross-municipal conversations and work. So in terms of creating a good template, we want to make sure that if one town has data in a different format than the other, that we work through that process and start to identify how some of that might work. So again, thinking through how these might be as a template for future work, we did want to make sure that we were cross-municipal, working on some intermunicipal coordination and not just focusing on one particular municipality. If you are interested in only one municipality, then there's a whole bunch of different planning options that could be a great fit, like a natural resource inventory, which is very similar to a watershed characterization. And similar to a watershed characterization, a natural resource inventory can build to an open space plan that includes the actions and next steps and strategies. And so if you are interested in one municipality in particular, there's other planning approaches that could be really valuable. I'm gonna just hold the floor open for any other questions that folks might have, just in case you're looking at materials. And of course, if questions come up once you are reviewing materials, please don't hesitate to reach out to me by email, and I'll answer them as soon as I can. We don't want you to be in the dark on this. We're really here to provide some assistance and explanations. All right, well, hearing none, I'm going to start to close. And if the light bulb goes off, go ahead and type it in the Q&A box and I'll address it. But I'll just say thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for your interest in watershed planning and characterizations. I hope that this presentation was helpful. And like I said, if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to email me. All of the materials are up on the website. A recording of this webinar will be there for reference along with the slides. So you have links to the specific information that I shared, lots of detail in the request for applications on exactly where to find some of this information. But of course, please reach out if you need any assistance. And if you have any feedback on this process, really under the barriers of under-resourced communities to access technical assistance and support is really of concern, and we're trying to make this as user-friendly as possible. And so if you have feedback on how this process worked or didn't work, we'd really, really welcome that so we can keep improving things over time. So great. So with that, I will close the session and hope you all have a great afternoon.